self-compassion comes from that place. There's no, like self-love and love out there. It's all one big field. There's no healing without that capacity.
Trust your allurements. The deeper allurements are pulling you somewhere, and the specific form that it takes may change. It may be what you think it is, it may be something different, but there's something there, and just take one more step closer to it, whatever that is. It will lead you on your path.
I like to describe it as a psycho-spiritual technology because first of all, it really is a process that moves, that facilitates the emergence of that consciousness of unique self. So basically, in the process of 9 months, it the process takes you it takes you through a series of practices. It's like an incubator. You just start into this process and you begin to first dismantle this shell of your separate self, right? And so you begin to, and there's a lot of things that we do in that first part of the process that are therapeutic. They're about working with ego identifications, or so there's shadow work, there's all kinds of things that are familiar to you for sure, certainly. And we use tools that help dismantle that hard shell of the separate self. That's the first part of the process. Then there's a part in the process that's bridge. That part is the first one, and then we go into a part where we're more interested in opening vistas and thinning the veil between separate self and true self. True self being what we said earlier, that oneness consciousness. And here we introduce the participants to different tastes of true self. So I mentioned Zen practice. David mentioned mystic Christianism. There are all kinds of different ways to enter true self and have different experiences. So that's the part where we it's kind of a way of helping our participants tap into as many tastes of true self they can have, so that they can uniquely feel into what's their entry, what's the cultivation that's going to nourish them, so that they can begin to ongoingly have practices that help them cultivate that access to source. And from that, now we have the ground. Now that the person is more able to see their separate self as object, and that separate self is still subject, but more or less they're able to say, oh, that's my separate self. So I'm not just that separate self. It's not just, it doesn't have me, that identification. I have it. I can see it, right? And then, oh, I can source into true self. So now I have the ingredients to start coming from my unique self. And then in that aspect of the work, we introduce practices that are specifically designed to hone on that unique self's gifts and unique capabilities. So we use a lot of some lenses from Dr. Mark's Dharma teachings that are, I don't know if maybe, yeah, well, you were at the festival last year, so you heard about lines and circles a lot. Mm-hmm. And so we use lines and circles in this particular aspect of the work to work with polarities and to help someone just become more aware of what their unique self gifts are, and to be coming from that place, and so that they can be of contribution to the world and be in that relationship with the world, so that their Eros um, can be fully or more fully um, expressed in relationship with other unique selves. So that's the kind of it's short description of what the process is about. It's a 9-month process, and a 9 month is just it just happened that it's 9 months, but I think it's perfect because it's really a birth. Uh, and yeah, and it's a process that you can reiterate. It's a spiral, so you go through it once and you can go through it many times, because each time you go through a layer of the onion, it's an ongoing um, iteration of practices that become part of you. So once you have them in your system, they're kind of downloaded, and you can engage them as you need. So, I'd love to hear David talk about it, because somehow, I mean, I created the process with Barbara, so we never were just participants of the process. We actually created the process that we wanted to have, we would have liked to receive. We always said that, this what we created was what we were looking for that we didn't find, and we created it. So, yeah, I'd love to hear David speak about it.
Yeah, because I went through the whole program myself, right? And so I can share a few examples. And also another thing to add about how it makes it different from a lot of other kind of growth programs is that there seems to be two big camps. One is personal development to make me feel more, whole and, you know, just kind of making my life better, right? In whatever ways. And then there's like the awakening camp, which is actually waking up kind of to what's ultimately real. And this blends both of them, right? It's actually helps a person become who they're really meant to be in all the biggest ways. And of course, Claire brings in integral coaching as a methodology, which is an integration of the greatest leverage points for human transformation that have been consolidated and synthesized into the integral coaching process. So that's that. And then, your listeners might have heard these principles and been like, wow, this is fascinating. There's actually a psychoactive quality to it. Just listening and learning them actually points out who we really are and opens us up. But without those principles showing up in the story of our lives, as Mark often says, it's all words until it shows up in the story of our lives. It doesn't fully land. And this program is the only one to actually bring all these principles into an embodied practitioner, practice oriented, fundamentally program. Right. And so I can give a little bit of an example of my experience. Lines and circles, for example, and we don't go into the whole what are lines and circles so much, but for basically think lines, and you think of let's just say, moving forward, making things happen, penetrating reality, being steady, powerful, that sort of way. That's a line set of line qualities. Circle qualities are, holding, resting, receiving, being receptive to the flow, opening up to possibility, letting emergence happen, connections, relationships. Those are circle qualities. And a unique self is an integration, a healthy dance between these qualities. And in this process, we actually go through and say, like, where are you? Do you have a circle quality in shadow? And so how can we kind of bring it into the light, right? And so in my example, I have a lot of circle qualities. You may or may not realize that. But all of last year, I felt a strong emphasis on circle and sort of resting in my home with my community and embracing lots of relationships and, just being present and just sort of going with the flow. And I felt like there was something that was stuck. Like I wasn't moving forward in my life. And so what Claire helped me realize is, oh, you have line qualities in shadow, right? And so once we discern what line qualities are in shadow, she gave me some practices to work with it. And just a simple example is something called what do we even call it? I think we had a couple different names for it. But every day, actually starting the day with what is my vision for what I want to create or what's happening through me, and what are steps I can take towards moving towards that vision. Simple practice, but it cultivates line energy, right? And then what I'm working on right now is more of a breakthrough energy, and so I challenge myself a little bit more than I have been. The last week I've been waking up early and training in Aikido a lot more and sort of breaking through my comfort zone, and I feel like this energy just flowing through me in a whole new way because line qualities were kind of stuck in shadow and they're allowed to flow, right? And of course the best way to do it is always to have it in dance with circle qualities. So we go through the whole process around that, right? Looking at where those energies are stuck. So that's line and circle qualities. I can give you one more example of the program if that's all right. Yeah.
Please do.
So in one of the first module, the separate self module, we look at our false self. So the part of our separate self identity that, during early childhood was wounded in a particular way, and we create stories and, false beliefs about ourselves, like I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. Mine was I don't belong. And that's the story that we all have a version of that story that is unconsciously driving the show a lot of the times. And as much meditation and journaling and practice I've done over the years, I was never quite able to transform that or to kind of get into a better relationship with it until this practice that Claire gave me, which is the false self observation practice, where I would, anytime I felt triggered, and go into a shame spiral of like, oh, I don't belong in this group. Oh, they're going to reject me, or I'm not good enough to be in here, whatever. I would, instead of running away, which is a sort of a natural tendency, I was able to sit with it, feel it come up, and actually go into it with a lot of compassion, which is actually abundantly available. Like we live in a field of love, so why wouldn't compassion be available all the time, right? Which I didn't quite capture. And Claire helped me realize this, like, oh, yeah, just inviting a little bit more compassion to it and being with it, not trying to fix anything, not trying to say don't be that way or overcoming it or even transforming is not even the right word, right? It's actually just being with it, inviting compassion until it naturally on its own accord, it softens and it releases. Mm-hmm. Right? And there's a spaciousness that opens up. And from that spaciousness, then I can ask the question of what is mine to do? What does reality really need from me?
Right.
And I can show up.
Beautiful, David. I love to hear you describe it like that. And what I want to add to this is that what David just described, a practice that actually takes about 3 months to become part of you. So that he described it like a one thing, but it's like it's incremental, and that's the so it becomes embodied. And the reason the way that it becomes embodied is that it's an integral practice. It works on different layers of your being. It works on the mind, it works on the feelings, it works on the body. And the practice itself is, that's why we say it's psychoactive. It metabolizes the pain body that would have David escape those situations and run away and believe the story. And so, yeah, it's an important part of the process to be able to. That's what I meant earlier. It allows for those parts of you to become object. So you recognize them, take care of them, and you metabolize the story, the pain, the actual frequency and energies that are attached to that part, to those parts.
Yeah, and this sort of secret, which I hesitate to share, but it's the deepest truth of this unique self-realization, is that even the false self patterns that keep us stuck and that are just such a problem all the time, right? Once we transform our relationship to them, they actually become the source of our greatest gifts. They actually serve to awaken our unique selves, right? So it all is part of the symphony of ourselves and of the cosmos.
That's the tikkun that we call that in our jargon or in our teachings. It's the fixing, it's the healing that happens. The wound is part of the whole story. Actually, the thread of the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
So self-compassion is actually a huge component of the work in the first 3 months. And self-compassion, as David beautifully said, can only be sourced in compassion, which is what we call outrageous love in our jargon, which is the field in which I fell fully when in that experience that I shared about. I mean, self-compassion comes from that place. There's no like self-love and love out there. It's all one big field. So redirecting someone's psyche to that source is hugely important. There's no healing without that capacity.
So would you say it's almost that the compassion that they're drawing from is from the field of
Yeah,
compassion or
we
the
can't
field of love?
love ourselves if we don't tap into that love. I mean, that's what the mother gives us, a physical mother or a caregiver when we're born, is that bridge between the field of love and us. So we have the mother, which fulfills that role. And so what we're doing when we are learning or redirecting someone towards their self-love is like we're helping them access the mother within their mother. It's very circle quality. It's like finding my inner mother, and from that inner mother, then I tap into the mother love. Right? Yeah. So what you're describing is really that circle quality of embracing, and the mother is a very circle, just as there is a father, and there is there are all the archetypes that live in us. But yeah, that capacity to be in touch with our inner mother and to receive, to give ourselves that acceptance and that love is the beginning of being able to move on to our unique self, because there's no way we can grow and transform if we're not accepting where we are, where if we don't have that capacity to turn towards the wound, right? um, then like it's impossible to move, to really heal if we don't turn towards the wound and accept it as it is.
And it's only from there then we can access the Father, right? The inner Father that calls us to our unique risk, calls us to take the steps we need to take in this life beyond a separate self-comfort zone, go into that risky territory like Moana when she left the island. She's like, I can't leave the island. This is I'm not supposed to leave, right? But taking that risk, the Father calls
That's
us,
hero. That's the hero energy.
right? So
The
calls us out and
taking your unique risk, right? That's the energy.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
and actually be in that unknown for some time. And that's a lot of your listeners are probably in this unknown space. I'm lost. How do I find myself, right? And actually if we're able to rest in that field and trust that the field is loving us, and trust that we're actually here, the field wants us to show up. The field will tell us in whatever form, right? So many different ways, infinite ways.
I think that was a really beautiful distinction, actually, about it's only when we feel the mother, which is the love and the compassion and maybe like somewhat of a sense of being nurtured and safe, that we can then lean into the fatherly risk. And I've never considered it in that order before. And actually, as you said that, I'm like, oh, I can really feel that order is like by having that, accessing that motherly energy, that field, to feel that then gives me the sense of kind of safety and nurture from within to actually take the risk from that place.
Well, think of how we learn how to walk, right? We learn how to walk by being praised and encouraged and received when we fall, and from that secure attachment place, we move on with that hero energy and start taking our unique, our walks. And that's really it's an archetypal journey.
Amazing. So the 9-month program, it almost feels like it's a gestation period
Mhm.
for the rebirth. So is this, so you're launching the online version of
Yeah.
this, and for people that are hearing this, there's things that are pinging in them that feel called to find out more. What's the best way for them to go about it?
um, well, they can schedule a call with us so we can tell them all about it and answer the questions. But before that, they can find out about the program on our website. And David, do you have the address
I can add
handy?
that
Or
there. Yeah.
this will be probably in your description. So,
Yeah, I'll add the links in for people to be able to find that. Yeah.
but yes, we have a website where the whole process is described, and they can schedule a call with us, and there's an application process. Um, David, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add something that, this, as we've already described, this isn't just a self-help program, right? We're at a time in the world where we need people to wake up to their fullest selves, their unique selves, because there's needs that need to be addressed, right? And so this unique self-emergence process it has two prongs to it. One is I'm transforming, going through the process of unique self-emergence myself. And the second is I learn to do it with other people. So we're actually going to sit with participants and supervise the coaching process and give them the tools to then be able to go out and work with other people, clients, in whatever form those are. So it actually ripples out, right?
Right. Yeah. Thank you for adding this, David. When Barbara and I created a process, that was obvious for us that this was what we wanted to do, and that's right. I didn't give this detail. We wanted to empower change agents, people who already work with people who have their coaching practice or their therapeutic practice, or that are spiritual directors, people who work with people in some capacity, who help them heal or transform. And so we wanted to give them this technology so that they could, whatever work they were doing with people, they could enhance it by channeling all that energy towards unique self. And so our program is actually a training program for professionals who work with people in that sort of capacity, to help them kind of, what's the word? Just make their whatever they do. They can. The process is you can incorporate or integrate the process in whatever you're doing already.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have to give up what you're doing and start doing the unique self emergence process. You can totally integrate it in whatever you're doing in your work with people, and so it can only enhance it because it's focused on the topic of all topics, which is becoming your unique self.
It sounds like it's almost something that would allow someone to enter into a new paradigm.
Mm.
And then even if they're still in the same modalities, but with that paradigmatic shift,
Yes, that's
that,
very well said.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. A new story. And as we know in developmental psychology, when we learn a new story of reality, it actually transforms who we are. Our identity shifts, right? And everything comes from there. Every action actually comes out of our story of who we are. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I heard a quote from Dr. David Hawkins recently, which was a miraculous transformation takes place by one's positionality dissolving and taking a new one. And it
Mm.
almost feels like a similar type of thing. It's like when our existing position of how we view the world dissolves and changes, there's like a miraculous transformation that takes place.
Yeah. I love you. You just did a video on it a few days ago, right? Or last week or something. You talked about it. something like that, right? And I remember that, and it was just being able to loosen up who we think we are and be able to actually find who we really are in a certain sense.
Yeah. I love it. It sounds incredible. So I'll add the links for people to be able to find it. And is there anything else that you'd like people to know, or that you'd like to share? Anything we've not covered yet?
I think we covered a lot. Anything feels that we missed?
Well, I just invite everyone to trust your allurements. The deeper allurements are pulling you somewhere, and the specific form that it takes may change. It may be what you think it is, and maybe something different, but there's something there, and just take one more step closer to it, whatever that is. It will lead you on your path. And I just want to, I pray that everyone is able to discover who they really are in this lifetime, and show up more fully with a lot more love, because that's what this is all about, right?
Aho.
Amen.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Something I've been thinking about a lot recently is the idea of freedom being connected to having nothing to hide and nothing to prove, and it feels like that kind of like a lot of unique self really is in that. Is like, hey, there's nothing to hide. This is me uniquely, and also there's nothing for me to prove around that. It's just, so yeah, I love that, David. Thank you.